My name is Amir Keyman Khandani, and I have been invited to present the outcome of a work we have done on building a full duplex radio modem at one of the exhibitions of PIMRC in Toronto. And the exhibition has asked us to also have a copy of the demo on YouTube. So, in preparing for this, I thought maybe I should add a few things that hopefully can assist future generation of scientists. So I want to start by saying, I am sure that everybody agrees that academic integrity is nothing other than exercising scientific honesty to improve human lives by responsibly producing and effectively sharing of research results. And in doing this, in my humble opinion, and I'm sure in the opinion of many of you, there is no middle ground, there is no white lies, there is no compromise. It's a duty. Now, why am I starting a demo that is supposed to be something, scientific exercise by statements of this nature? So, the topic, as I said, is full duplex wireless. It was a topic that 10, 15 years ago um, had a huge, uh, essentially, promise, and it slowed down. And it slowed down when it was most needed at the time that 5G was being introduced into the market. Before I go into this, for people who are not entirely in the area, wireless, the cost is a spectrum. Spectrum is a natural resources. We can't make more of it, and it's extremely expensive. Spectrum costs billions of dollars, and what full duplex wireless promises to do is to use this spectrum in both directions in two ways, from A to B as well as from B to A. Consequently, the amount of spectrum will essentially doubles. Spectrum belongs to the government as a natural resource, but government charges huge amounts, and service providers unavoidably have to charge taxpayers in order to be able to afford the cost of the spectrum. And full duplex is the only option that we can solve the bottleneck bottleneck in wireless spectrum needs. There is no other way. Now let's see why something so important didn't make it, at least at this point. There is no question that full duplex eventually 10 years from now, 5 years from now will make it there. Will become the main horsepower behind wireless. But why it started to grow and then it slowed down? The reason is, in my humble opinion, that academic community unfortunately typically gives the priority to the number of publications at the cost of a reduction in quality. And having huge number of publication, each of them slightly different from the other one, many of them even discussing topics that are non-existent, following wrong solutions. The consequence is that there will be a lot of noise caused by millions articles published yearly. And the chaos that this causes due to the sheer volume of mostly low quality publication doesn't let people to essentially purify the knowledge and use it as it's needed, as it could be used. So the consequence of this last, rise in the hope for full duplex wireless and then the downfall of it, the consequence is that millions, if not billions of dollars were wasted. Simply the cost of the spectrum. Spectrum in Canada costs in the range of hundreds of billions of dollars. It's not cheap. Numerous research studies investigated problems that were largely non-existent. Problems were invented, were made, not for the purpose of having a useful outcome, but were engineered to have a solution, an easy solution. And that easy solution ended up in publication, served that purpose. So, scientists essentially, I'm not saying that all scientists, some, they did it just to pave the way to increase their number of publications. And as a result, the only viable solution capable of reducing the cost and improving the performance of wireless spectrum slowed down immaturely, namely full duplex wireless. And consequences of this slowdown on the well-being of the society are beyond description. This will, as I said, there is no option. This will get back into the mainstream again, but any delay in science is something that can cost lives, can cost comfort of life, and so on. Now, let's just get into reason that I am going through all this. Okay? So here on the left-hand side, you see a page from a United States patent that I filed provisional filing in 2005, and the patent was issued in 2010. As you see, there are two transmit antennas T located at equal distance of D from a receive antenna, and this particular geometry results in the interference from the transmit antennas cancel each other at the receiver, and consequently you can have full duplex communication. So US Patent Office is an open public search engine, free of charge, and any scientist who does a search on Google Scholar or anywhere else to complete or to understand what is the background behind his work will immediately reach to US Patent Office. It is not hidden anywhere. So this left-hand side is what I had done. Now let's go to Stanford team in 2011. They
Stanford University. Stanford University.
A bunch of my students, just over a year or so ago, came up with a way to build a new kind of wireless radio. And this radio, unlike radios before it, has the unique capability that it can receive and transmit at the same time.
Designing radios that could transmit and receive at the same time was thought to be generally impossible.
For the first design, the radio has, rather than one transmit antenna, has two transmit antennas. And then it has a receive antenna positioned between them. So what happens is the two transmitted signals interfere destructively at the receive antenna, and the receive antenna doesn't hear the signal. It effectively hears not silence, but very, very quiet version of the signal, because those two conflicting signals cancel each other. And so you create this null position where the receiver doesn't hear itself, and so it can actually receive packets from other radios.
Now we have actually...
Okay, so this is essentially, what happens with the Stanfords, and it can happen in scientific community because scientists all follow the same type of problems, and there can be overlap in work, and we give it benefit of doubt that they were busy and they didn't search on the US Patent Office, which is, by the way, a duty to search and see who else has done what. Otherwise, we all end up building the first step towards, we want to reach the top of the building, and everybody works on the very first step. If we don't look at who has done what and try to improve upon what others have done. In any event, let's just give it the benefit of doubt that this team from Stanford, they didn't search the Google, they didn't search the US Patent Office. With 10 years, almost 10 years of time difference, they were not aware of my work. All of that is fine. The part that bothers me, and the part that is absolutely unacceptable in terms of a scientific exercise, is the following. This gentleman that you see on the screen, I met him in a conference in Greece. 2 years, 3 years after all this, publications and patents and so on. And you know what he told me? He told me, I am sorry, we didn't get the chance to reference to your work. Giving reference is not something that a scientist has inherited as gold, for example, from a rich father that can decide to give or not to give and then cover it by a simple apology. Bottom line, he said this, I am sorry, meaning that he was very well aware, and even worse, they never did that. Moving forward, they never and they had a huge number of publications following up from that initial work, and in any of them, in one of them, in somewhere, it was their scientific duty to tell that we missed to see what Amir Khandani had done. It's not that what I did is a big deal. What they did is not a big deal either. There has been a long way from this initial discovery to the full duplex radio that I will demo at PIMRC. But the principles are what matter. Now, let's go to something that is even worse, that bothers me even more. So, let's just look at what is a review paper. A review paper is supposed to responsibly summarize what others have done and do it to pave the way for many more to draw the right conclusions without the need to go through thousands and hundreds of references. This is a review paper by some well-established scientists. Okay, so in this review paper, they discuss this topic. On the left-hand side, you see my design, that there are two transmit antennas at equal distance to the receive antenna. In the middle is what the Stanford team came up with. And as you see, instead of having the antennas at equal distance, they have one of the antennas at distance d and the other one as d plus lambda divided by 2. And the reason and essentially the net effect of this lambda divided by 2 is that it causes phase shift, and the net effect will be similar to what I had, with one major difference. When you use distance wire or antenna to create a phase, that phase depends on the frequency. Lambda here is the bandwidth. Lambda here is the wavelength. So when the phase depends on the wavelength, then you get an antenna which creates that phase shift only at that particular wavelength. And consequently, the antenna becomes very narrow bandwidth, which is not acceptable for full duplex wireless, because full duplex wireless requires antennas of high bandwidth. So what happens is, this review article, briefly, without getting into any detail, one among a list of references mentions my work, that this guy has also worked on full duplex wireless, then goes through the middle picture of the work that Stanford had done, and finally reaches to the picture on the right-hand side, which, as you see, has the same distance to the middle antenna and has that pi means 180 degree phase shift. Bottom line, this right-hand side was made in 2012 by Arionfar. Mine was in 2006, and they are identical. The problem I have is the following. The problem I have is that these people published this review article. A review article doesn't have scientific value other than explaining truthfully what others have done. And the first step to achieve this is to read the paper that they are referring to. The only conclusion that I can make, while being respectful to these authors, is that they have not read any of the papers that they have referenced. Otherwise, if they had opened that patent, they would see that the figure on the left-hand side, which is from my patent in 2006, is exactly the same as what Arionfar has in 2012, with 6 years time difference. What they are essentially saying, they are promoting Arionfar as the scientist who solved the shortcoming of that middle design, which was by Stanford team, while this humble person here had solved this 5-6 years ahead of before all of them. Thank you very much.